what do you think about our society's relationship to work? A lot of people are writing about burnout and overwork,
Mm.
and I would love your take on it.
So here's what I would say about burnout. And I feel this very strongly. So like we talk about this all the time on the Happier podcast. And it's one of my 12 personal commandments, which is to identify the problem. And that sounds very obvious. You're like, well, of course I know what the problem is. Why do I have to identify it? But something like burnout is not helpful. You say, I feel burnout. Okay. What does that mean? Do you feel like I feel completely physically drained because I stay up late binge watching TV and I never get any exercise and I eat a lot of junk food? So I feel burned out. I feel burned out because I never see any of my colleagues face to face and I'm a really extroverted social person. And I feel like I'm not getting that energy that I need that I used to get. I'm feeling burned out because a bunch of people got let go and I'm actually doing the job of 2.5 people. I don't have the time or the skills to do the kind of work that's now being asked of me. I'm feeling burned out because I feel like in this day and age, my values have shifted and I want to have a more mission driven career. And so I feel like something that was once fulfilling to me is no longer fulfilling. All these people could say that they're burned out. They would have extraordinarily different things to do about it. And so by kind of just vaguely saying you feel burned out, it doesn't actually help you figure out, well, therefore what? Because I think it's very easy to just sort of feel like, oh, I have this general sense of uneasiness or feeling overwhelmed. But because I haven't really tried to understand what's not working, I don't see a solution. And I think sometimes people are like, well, I just need to quit my job. Well, it's like, okay, but maybe you don't need to quit your job because maybe it's just like one specific aspect of it is what is really kind of the grit, the sand in your eye. And if you could solve that, then everything would change. And also because probably a lot of your listeners are obligers, because a lot of people are obligers, is there is something called obliger rebellion. And this is when obligers meet expectations, and then suddenly they snap and they say, this I will not do. And they often say, oh, it's because of burnout. And obliger rebellion can be small and funny. Like, I'm not going to answer your emails for 2 weeks. It can be huge. Like, I'm going to quit my job right now, today, because I've had it. This is over. And it happens when obligers feel like expectations have become unmanageable, like they feel ignored, taken advantage of, exploited, unheard. And so kind of obliger rebellion is this phenomenon that comes in and blows up the situation to kind of to save them, like to protect them. But obliger rebellion is often very destructive because it's not in control. It's not something that the obliger is mindfully doing. It's something that kind of happens. They often use metaphors of explosion, like a volcano erupting. And it often doesn't make sense to the people around them because it's like, well, if you didn't want to be on that committee, why did you say yes when I asked you if you would want to do it? Why didn't you just say no? And other people don't understand why the obliger feels this immense pressure to meet outer expectations. And so I think sometimes when people have burnout, especially when they do something pretty dramatic in response to burnout, it's often because of obliger rebellion. And once you understand that's what's going on, then you might have a very different view about what you would do to solve it or to prevent it even better.
I mean, what do you think about, does our society, or do we expect too much from work? Like, that we expect work to bring us this happiness, and in fact, if you get some fulfillment or accomplishment or value out of work, that's enough. Like, we glorify people, we really worship at the altar of entrepreneurs and people who've made millions of dollars in their 20s or 30s. Like, is it that we have there's a friction between ambition and happiness?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I remember an old boss of mine said that ambitious people could never be happy because the essence of ambition was never to be satisfied. And I don't I don't think that's true. Um, I think it's very hard to make generalizations because I feel like that's kind of like saying, how do people feel about families? I mean, they feel a lot of different ways about families because there's a lot of different families running around. I feel like people have a lot of different views of work and a lot of different desires for work. To me, it's always a question of like, well, what do I want? What are my values? What are my interests? What's my temperament? And what is my season of life? I think you alluded to this earlier. Sometimes we're in a season of life where things shift. Like, maybe I can't be in a book group. I'm in a season of life where that just is not going to happen, but that season of life will change. And then I could do it. Maybe in 5 years, I can do it. Maybe next year I can do it. Um, But this is not a season of life where that's going to work for me. And so I think sometimes it can be easier to be like, well, maybe I can do all these things, but not right this second. I can't do all of them all the time. So I would say to people, really, really get clear on what you want from work, because if you have immense expectations, then you should think about that and work for that. And if you're sort of like, hey, you know what? I'm in a season of life where I really want to do a good job, but I kind of want to be in a place where like I know my way around, I know all the shortcuts, everybody knows me. So I know how to, if I need a little bit of slack, everybody I'm cool. And this isn't when I'm gunning for a promotion because I just kind of like want to keep it simple. And then in 2 years, that's when I'm really gonna like lift my vision and like go for that next big challenge. That could be great for some. Or somebody could be like, now is the time. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always wanted to start something. I've always wanted to work for myself. Now is the time. This is the moment. How do I set myself up for success in kind of like every area of my life to help me achieve that aim? Um, those people all want very different things from themselves, from their surroundings, from the people around them. I think it's hard to make generalizations because they're all valid, and they're all common, but they're very different from each other.